Yo, what's good, people? Signing in. I might look a little bit dirty, yeah. I've been hard at work, people. So let me be. All right. Yo, I'm gonna do a little review for you. This one's for the metalheads. I mean, you gotta be a metalhead to be into this, man. This is a noisy record. All right. Under no background. I don't know much about the record. Yeah. I only know so much. This is gonna be my perspective on the sound of the record and, you know, how I feel towards this. We're going to talk about CRYPTOPSY, yeah? The record is None So Vile, and this is the one album I've heard by CRYPTOPSY. I've not heard any of their other material, okay? I've seen the artwork of None So Vile hanging about, maybe on a couple of t-shirts, and as for other places, I'm not so certain. Maybe in related videos and so forth when I've been scanning the internet, like, through the years. I've come across it here, there and everywhere, but I've never given it much of a gander. Now, I myself, I'm not the biggest death metal head, you know. I like my punk-infused stuff, I like my hardcore punk, and then I like my musics outside of that. I like my indies, my alternatives, and my more songwriter-based stuff. So death metal in itself, metal concern, like thrash metal and so forth. And I'm sorry if you've already heard this spiel. I just have to give a little bit of background in regards to my taste, especially when I'm speaking on a death metal band. So this is a noisy record. This is a really noisy record, yeah? And I reacted to this in its entirety. I did a first time listen on King of the Pit TV, yeah? As to where you beautiful people gave me a little bit of insight to the record as I sort of went along and listened to it track by track, so I had some understanding. That was a little bit ago now, but I just sort of revisited the record so I could have a little bit of food for thought to tell you what I thought, because I already have this pre-existing idea in my mind, considering I knew how I felt when I first listened to this record. And I'll cut to the chase. It's good music. It's completely subjective. I think it's good music. It's very noisy and insane sounding death metal, and I think I was listening to a remaster initially, or the upload date was 2008, because I referenced it. I said, this record was put out in 2008. It sounds ahead of its time. And somebody said, dude, this was put out in the mid-90s. Wow. So this record was put out in the mid-90s. It sounds absolutely ridiculous. From the sound of the band, the soundscape, the production value sonically, it's like, whoa. And although it is very extreme and noisy, the drummer is going insane throughout the entire record. We're going riff to riff to riff to riff. The front man is giving it just consistent low growls at a alarming rate. Throws in the odd high here and there. We can still hear everything. We still have a great separation of the instrumental as to where we can pick out each member of the band, what they're doing, with clarity and precision. And that's a beautiful thing. The sound engineer needs to give themselves a pat on the back. I want to know how much they were paying that, how much the label was paying, cause, you know what I mean, there's props to be given on them producers and, you know, the sound engineer as far as that's concerned. Absolutely fantastic, absolutely brilliant. Now, as far as my favourite member of the band, I'll tell you what, on this record, each and every member of that band played their part perfect. They came together cohesively as CRYPTOPSY and gave a brilliant showcase of death metal. Now, people consider it, I spoke to my friend about it, who considered it tech death, and then some people considering it brutal death metal. I guess each to their own. It wouldn't necessarily fulfill the criteria of tech death for me, purely as I consider traditional or traditional-esque death metal, you know, not like high-produced deathcore-y sort of all sorts of influenced death metal. I consider CRYPTOPSY a death metal band, and I associate death metal with technicality for the most part. It's a very instrumental driven sound and craft. You know, and the people who go and watch death metal and stuff appreciate instrumental capabilities and showcases, and I think some of that's to do with, you know, the lyrical content for the most part, not necessarily being that audible. We've got a door-to-door salesman behind me. I wonder if he knocks on the car. So I might shit my pants if he does in a moment, people. But yeah, let's get to it. He's put me off now. You probably see it in the background. So what I'm speaking of. All right, we're free as a bird, people. We're free as a bird. So I digress. Right, the band is a death metal band. Tech death. I don't know if I would categorize it as tech death, and a lot of my association of what I would consider tech death is the production, believe it or not, aside from the actual technical capabilities of the band, purely as I associate it with high-tech, high-end, polished, sci-fi-esque sounds. But maybe that's because the tech death bands I've heard have been, you know, sci-fi conceptual for the most part. Tends to be the case, doesn't it, right? The Faceless is always the band that comes to my mind. Then you got Obscura, and so on and so forth. They always tend to be relative to like space and sci-fi films. Now, to me, there is a heavy element of grindcore. Not in the D-beat crust punk sort of sense, but as far as the racket, noisy blasts, frantic noise, violent aggression element of grindcore, I hear a lot of that. Vocally, I think the dude's called King Worm or Lord Worm or something. He must be an underrated character as far as death metal is concerned, because I've never heard this name really before. And the performance on this record is second to none. Second to none. Very pleasing to me. I really like the vocals. I don't tend to be a fan of lows. I like mids and highs for the most part. Well, I don't mind lows, but they tend to be very debatable for me. Very debatable. But the lows on this record is predominantly low vocals, right? Low growls and grunts, and just, they're peppered at you. They're peppered at you. But it doesn't get boring. Intense, ridiculous, fantastic execution. And then every once in a while, you'll get this high. And I wanted more highs on the record. I'm not going to lie to you. I wanted more highs. So this nice, raspy, crispy high comes in like a deathcore high. Proper shriek. Really nice. Riff-wise, we go riff to riff to riff to riff to riff. We might bounce back on a couple of good ideas. So we might structure a riff to sort of flow over a minute or get revisited in the same track with a different drum pattern. The riffs are good. The riffs are good. We don't really go off of death metal riffing. Well executed, well thought out, sets the tone. The atmosphere is brilliant. The artwork is congruent with the sound of the band. The title of the record is congruent with the sound of the band. It's a brutal, violent onslaught. There's no arty-farty nonsense. There is no boring death metal elements, because I perceive a lot of it is boring. In my opinion, some of the best death metal bands, I think they're boring. But this band really tickles me, because me listening to this in 2023 and you telling me this record was put out in mid-90s, how ahead of its time was this record? How ahead of this time? This band would play death metal events easy. This band would play hardcore and punk, metal tinged hardcore bands. You know what I mean? Easy. Grind. Easy. As far as the extreme landscape of music, this band would very easily fulfill the criteria of the majority of these events and festivals. Absolutely superb. Mwah. Really good. Now, bassist, considering I've only just revisited the record through my mobile phone as of recent, the most I can comment on is the bass is that it's incredibly consistent. I remember as much as that every once in a while you'll have this nice pop, bang, like this twang, just fire itself through the soundscape from the bass guitar, and that's very unique and very nice. We've got grooves on this record, we've got breakdowns, not in a hardcore mosh sense, although some may debate that is possible, but we've got instrumental breakdowns, tempo breakdowns, which hit you like a brick. Some of the grooves are ridiculous. I'm not going to go as far as calling it a groove band or a groovy band, but they have a groove potential, which just becomes apparent every once in a while with a ridiculous chugging riff. And I'll leave that there. 30 minutes, essentially, give or take, is the length of the record. It gives you all you need. I mean, this is a noisy record. This is a very noisy record. I think 30 minutes is more than enough. 30 minutes accentuates the intensity and states the message that needs to be said in the right amount of time. If it was any longer, it'd just be overkill. Any shorter could work, but I mean, if you're looking at the song lengths, you know what I mean? If we got up to 20 minutes, there's potential of it being an EP as opposed to an LP. 30 minutes is perfect. 30 minutes is absolutely perfect. The amount of tracks on there is the right amount of tracks. And I'm going to give this record an easy 9 out of 10. This could be the best death metal record I've heard in my life up until this point. I have a big journey to take when it comes to death metal, but this could be the best death metal record I have ever heard. For somebody who does not like death metal, I think this is an absolutely brilliant, raging, youthful record. It's not, fucking boring metal, death metal. People are going to be stood there. Which probably is the case, you know what I mean? Because I know what you metalheads are like, but it sounds youthful in energy. It's just ramped up above and beyond. It doesn't go out of its way to be offensive, which I appreciate, because I can't be arsed with, like, edgy for edgy's sake. There is a great maturity to the record. So I'm going to give it 9 out of 10, which, as of so far, is the highest rating I have given on this channel. And without further ado, I'm signing out. So if you want to keep in touch, click subscribe.